they're based on certain premises. The fourth possibility is that accommodation is not possible and that Beijing inflicts comprehensive steps. One would be a suspension of contacts between these semi-official organizations. Two, de facto implementation or sort of less than effective implementation of past agreements. The mainland business environment for Taiwan companies deteriorates. Tourists stop going to Taiwan. Students stop going to Taiwan universities. China steals some of Taiwan's diplomatic allies, and so on and so on. And that you have a danger then of Taiwan responding in a negative way and a spiral of difficulty. So what's happened since the election? Tsai won on January 21st, which was 5 days after the election, said, in addition to her past statements, and for the first time, well, she used the term political foundation, which is a Beijing term, and then elaborated on what its key elements were. One was that the semi-official discussions in 1993, which led to the 1992 consensus, are a historical fact. And second was the Republic of China's current constitutional order. The third element of the political foundation was the accumulated results of more than 20 years of cross-strait negotiations. And the fourth was Taiwan's democratic principles and the will of the people. Now, some took all of this as conciliatory, and you know, it probably was. But the PRC response has not been sort of completely welcoming. Chen-sheng, who's number 4 in the Chinese Communist Party hierarchy, said that China was going to adhere to the One China principle, firmly oppose and contain Taiwan independence activities in any form, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Taiwan Affairs Office on February 24th said, no matter who's in power in Taiwan, no matter what they said in the past, we're willing to interact with them as long as they recognize the historical fact of the 1992 consensus, and they use that explicit term, and recognize the core connotation of both sides, that both sides of the strait belong to one China. There's that idea, again, of territory in China. Then Wang Yi, in the statement that Kara cited, said, I hope and expect that before that time comes, the inauguration, the person in power in Taiwan will indicate that she wants to pursue the peaceful development of cross-strait relations, and that she will accept the provision in Taiwan's own constitution that the mainland and Taiwan belongs to one and the same China. Some in the Taiwan media did pick up on the fact that Wang Yi didn't mention the words 92 consensus. I didn't find that convincing, frankly, because this idea that the mainland and Taiwan belong to one and the same China is the core of the political foundation of cross-strait relations, and the political foundation of cross-strait relations is the 1992 consensus. Therefore, one could sort of look at the language that Foreign Minister Wang Yi used and infer that it's not just enough for Tsai not to reject the PRC's formulation, but she needs to do certain things affirmatively to confirm her acceptance of them. Now, let me make one final point here, and that is we are just a few days away from a major signaling opportunity on the part of Xi Jinping. And that is that the National People's Congress will open in a couple of days. And then there's the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference as well. And it's traditional for the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, in this case Xi Jinping, to talk to representatives who reflect, or who are deemed to reflect Taiwan and deemed to represent Taiwan. And so what Xi Jinping says when he meets with these folks on this occasion, and the tone he uses, may be important signals to what he himself is thinking. And this is another aspect of trying to figure out what PRC intentions are, and that is that decision-making in China has gotten somewhat more concentrated in the hands of Xi Jinping, and the Taiwan issue is no exception. So, I'm looking forward to see what Xi Jinping says. So, U.S. policy. The long-standing and abiding, quote-unquote, interest of the U.S. government is peace and stability in the Taiwan area. As far as how the differences are resolved, we emphasize process over substance. We say it's up to the two sides. We're not smart enough to get involved in the mediation between the two. We tried that once in 1946 and it didn't work. How to defend and promote our interest at any time depends on the policies and actions both of Beijing and Taipei. And so we will calibrate according to who's doing what to whom. I think it's fair to say that since 1996, Taiwan's presidential election has been the driver of cross-strait relations. And so a defining moment for at least 4 years, if not 8 years. 2008 to 2016 have been really good years for the United States because we had in Taiwan a leader who, up to a point, was willing to engage the mainland, saw that as the best way to preserve and promote Taiwan's freedom, prosperity, and security. Our relationship with Taiwan improved as a result of that. It must be said also that there was a leader in Beijing, Hu Jintao, who was willing to take a risk in engaging Ma Ying-jeou. So essentially, U.S. policy towards Taiwan is a function of cross-strait relations. It's not a function just of what Taiwan does, although that's important, but it's a function of what China does as well. So one can chart the changes in U.S.-Taiwan policy through different Taiwan administrations. From 1995, more or less, to 2008, we had an approach that I call dual deterrence, and I can explain that if you want. I think we've stepped back from that since 2008. It's also worth noting that for every election since 2000, the United States has had something to say about the election and its impact on our interest. I did this as chairman of AIT in December of 1999. For the latest statement, look on the Brookings website for a session we had on May 21st last year, when Susan Thornton, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Mongolia, made her statement. And she placed responsibility for, on both sides, for demonstrating creativity and flexibility to maintain recent trends. I can quote one sentence: there should be no unilateral attempts to change the status quo, and that applies to both sides. I think it's fair to say that looking forward to the Tsai administration, we are not prejudging her intentions. We're not prejudging her actions. I hope that Beijing is not prejudging, but we'll see. I think that the Obama administration and whatever administration follows will watch what she says and also what she does, and constantly be assessing what that means. So in conclusion, and coming back to cross-strait relations, my fear is that due to mutual misperceptions between Beijing and Taipei, due to domestic politics on either side, but especially in Taiwan, and due to the words and actions that each side deploys toward the other, the trend will be towards tensions and instability. And that will pose a challenge for the United States. If there is such a deterioration, a key question for Washington, and for the Taiwan public too, for that matter, is who is most responsible for causing the deterioration. And I expect that PRC and Taiwan diplomats will be very eager to inform us that the other guy was responsible. But we've been there. We've done that before. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that actually what is going on, probably beneath the surface, which is where it should happen, is a mutual accommodation, and that Tsai Ing-wen will and Beijing will conduct themselves with sufficient restraint so that Beijing does not feel that it has to pull some kind of trigger and bring about a deterioration. However, as much as I hope that I'm wrong in my prediction, I worry that I'm right. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions until I'm told that the food is here. And feel free to ask anything you want. Things I've covered, things I haven't covered, and so on.